Hi, welcome to My Favorite Mistake. I'm your host, Mark Graban. Our guest today is Genevieve Skory, an international business success strategist with more than 2 decades of experience in entrepreneurial growth and corporate leadership. Genevieve previously served as Chief Field Development Officer for a $500 million company, developing sales and growth strategies for tens of thousands of independent business owners. She's a former executive turned entrepreneur, a mom of four successful YouTubers, and Genevieve now coaches women to strengthen their mindset, clarify their message, and build sustainable businesses without burnout. So, Genevieve, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
I'm curious. The four YouTubers, do they do things together, or they're all doing their own thing?
No, they do it all together and they have for over a decade. So, we homeschooled our kids
Uh huh.
and coming out of that homeschooling when they were done with high school, I had a son. My son said, "You know what? I don't think I want to go to college." And of course that
No.
horrified me. I know cuz,
Yeah.
listen, when you're at that time we had our own business. So when you're an entrepreneur and your kids
Yeah.
watching, like they don't think about getting jobs. And he said, "Listen, that people aren't going to watch TV the way they do now," which I totally misunderstood, but he was
Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
And the four of them started a YouTube channel and they ran it like a business at a very young age. And so they do it together. They work together and they have all this time.
Good for them. It sounds like not a mistake at all.
I am eating crow as
So that's a whole different series, talking about thing you thought was a mistake.
exactly. Bad advice you gave to your children that turned out to be really good advice for them. So,
Yeah. Well, it goes to show, for any of us, we don't have a crystal ball. Sometimes we make a prediction and it turns out. Sometimes not. And when it doesn't turn out, we call that a mistake, but there's no shame in it.
no, and the one thing that I appreciate the most about it, and and I'm kind of like I'll credit my husband more than myself,
Uh-huh.
was that they had the fortitude and the insight to try, and they
Mhm.
were willing to make the mistakes and learn for
Mm.
them and persevere. And I'm like, that's actually a really good trait to have. So,
For
yeah,
sure. That's entrepreneurship. So,
yeah.
Genevieve, with the different aspects of your career, I'm curious to find out where your story is going to come from. What's your favorite mistake?
Yeah. So I think I would sum it up as saying my favorite and most impactful mistake was confusing performance for alignment.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I just got to a place where I traded pressure for leadership and speed for impact. And while I was in the middle of it, you couldn't have told me otherwise.
Yeah. So tell us more about that. Was that from the perspective of being a leader or from being led, or both?
That's a great question. I think it's a combination of things
Mhm.
because I think when you are rewarded for I would say now somewhat toxic behaviors, you just continue to do it. And I mean toxic
Mhm.
from the standpoint of it really wasn't healthy for me. It wasn't great
Mhm.
for the culture. And it wasn't great from a lifestyle standpoint either. But I performed. So it was like
Mm.
I just kept making it work, which I thought,
Yeah.
"This is fun. This must be how you play the game. You just keep pushing and pursuing and making it work," and then everybody's like, "Yeah, you made it work." But, so I think part of it was what I was learning and conditioned to do,
Mhm.
and I'll be honest, I think some of it was also my internal, misunderstanding of, like, what winning actually looked like, taking a step back and deciding what I wanted my career to look like and who I wanted to be.
Yeah. Could you set a little bit of context? Like, was this earlier in corporate settings? Could you give an example of, what I hear you saying is, sometimes organizations struggle with, we've got some people that are getting the right results the wrong way. Sorry, I
Right.
don't mean that to sound too harsh.
No, that's uh-huh. Yep. You got call a spade a spade. Uh-huh.
But could you fill in, like, kind of paint that picture for us of, kind of an example of one of those behaviors?
Well, I would say for me, the first thing was defining winning solely based on revenue.
Mhm. At all costs.
Whatever it took. Whatever it took, you hit the numbers, and that was my arena. My arena was I come kinda from sales and sales enablement and training, and I thought it was a game. I really thought, "Oh, this is fun. Like, put me in, coach. We're behind. I'll make it work."
Mhm,
I was the girl I defined winning as being the girl who could get it done. And you're right, it was kinda like get it done at all costs.
mhm,
And what that looked like was, oh, pressure? Yes, we thrive in pressure. So
mhm,
it was a plan based on constant pivoting, which is never really good,
mhm,
but it's kind of like, well, that's not working. We should try something else. It was also based on really, I would say, favoring performance over anything else, even as a leader. It was kinda like, "Oh, wow, look, but you got it done." My
mhm.
favorite one of my favorite sayings was, "But did you die? You didn't die."
Uh-oh.
So
So it must have made you stronger?
exactly. And some of that I think I learned in a military home. My dad was from the military, kinda ran the house that way. But I also just kinda learned that your sins tend to be forgiven
Yeah.
if you get the thing done.
Uh-huh.
And you really it's I think what happened also was I clocked all of those wins as, like, that's the name of the game, instead of
Mm,
really thinking about, like, how does everybody win on a day-to-day basis? So,
yeah.
if you have to hit a number and you have sales and you've got a plan, how about we work the plan instead of pivoting every 5 minutes?
Yeah, so, I wanted to dig into that a little bit more because, you talked about pivoting being a bad thing. I mean, I think there's something to be said for we tried something, it's not working. Let's learn, let's evolve it, let's iterate it. But it sounds like maybe you're pointing to something a little more extreme of kind of like going from guardrail to guardrail or just flailing around as opposed to being a little bit more intentional. Is that
Yeah. The missing element is clarity, I think, in most
Mhm.
cases. So people that tend to pivot, I think, too early and too regularly do so because of a lack of clarity. Clarity about the goals, clarity about the process, clarity about the mind that like the milestones, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's definitely okay and you should pivot on purpose, right? So, like,
Right.
we didn't hit these milestones. This isn't working. Time for a pivot and not, ugh, this feels scary. So, we should not continue along the plan. We should just do something different.
Yeah. So when did all of this either start catching up to you or when did you kind of start to notice that, hey, there's something lacking or, in the approach, or you mentioned earlier, maybe what it was doing to you?
So, yeah. So, part of my little problem was that I was ignoring kind of the signals that were happening internally. So, I'm a high performer, and I know that this is not uncommon for high performers, especially in sales, right? We're kind of
Mhm.
driven and we like the chase and the fight and all that kind of stuff. But what I've learned to do is ignore the internal signals. Okay, you wake up and you're feeling really tired. You enjoy the work, but you still like you just can't shake this sense of this is so exhausting.
Mhm.
When you're in that scenario, or at least when I was in that scenario, that just meant, okay, we need to just push harder. You just need to,
Yeah.
is that
Power through it.
yeah, because that's the
Yeah.
payoff, right? So the payoff was the little adrenaline you hit from making the goal, and you didn't like the way you were feeling, so you just push through it. You just power through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing that's tough about that, it seems like, well, there's some short-term reward, but but maybe some long-term pain, or was it burnout? I mean, that's something you coach and work with people on.
Yeah. So it looks a lot we say burnout, but I think there's varying degrees of burnout and there's varying causes of burnout, right? For me, it was focusing on the signals that I was getting emotionally and internally. It's kind of the nervous system thing, which is a really popular phrase at the moment. It's like, oh,
Mhm,
everyone's talking about nervous systems. But the truth is that if you are, and for me, pressure has to do with fear, and fear puts you soundly in your fight or flight state
mhm,
of being. And no good decision making happens
right.
in fight or flight. And then there's this terrible rippling effect where it's kinda like, okay, now everybody's in fight or flight because the leader sets the tone. The leader 100% sets the tone. So everybody's in fight or flight. Oh, and by the way, something I learned second biggest lesson was when you're in fight or flight mode, you would never get the truth. You liter your team
Yeah,
will never tell you the truth because they're just trying to tell you the things that will help them survive, and
sure.
it just creates kind of a crazy cycle.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you about leaders setting the tone, and I understand when people in the situation where, they're holding back the truth or they're fudging the truth a little bit because that's, I think, very situational and based on the circumstances where, you read some stories of corporate problems and there's a lot of that going on, and then it all falls apart and the leaders blame these people like, well, you were unethical or you weren't strong, that blame instead of thinking about like what environment was I creating.
Exactly, exactly, and, you don't I don't think you realize that until you back way away from it, Mark, like,
Mhm.
for me, it was kinda like, "Okay, this was crazy," like, when I stepped back, I really looked at it and thought, "Oh my gosh, that was crazy, and I'd like to apologize to 100 different people."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The justification part of you is like, "Yeah, but we all made some money and we all," but it's
Yeah.
like that can't be the only measurement of success.
Yeah. So what, maybe kind of final question related to your reflections and your experiences there. What were the key adjustments that you made? How much of it was changing the environment you were in versus kind of changing your approach and what you could control?
So, it was both. It really was both. Changed the environment, became an entrepreneur, and there was I think for me, what was really significant was a period of time where I could decompress and actually analyze
Mm.
like what I was feeling, maybe lick my wounds a little, look for patterns because this didn't start with my last year. Like this was something that had been building over like you get conditioned to
Yeah.
work that way,
Right.
until you're not. And so for me it was like, okay, I needed to learn how to and it takes some time. I tell people I'm still recovering
Yeah.
because a lot of that's hardwired into you.
Mm.
So it means stopping, calming down, asking, am I making this decision out of clarity or am I making it out of pressure or fear? And just, I think just stopping, that was a new thing for me, was just stopping and really having a moment to evaluate and check in with my feelings.
Yeah. I think, yeah, that's maybe similar to being caught in the fight or flight mode where we're just in survival mode. Our higher order thinking is literally, shut off. And I mean, I think there's a parallel, and you're making me reflect and think about times where it's just go, 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 busy, busy, busy. And when you're busy, you tend not to take time to reflect and ask questions around, well, am I spending my time on the right things? I could be working longer and harder on the wrong stuff. And without reflection, we might be stuck in that. And that's where sometimes having a coach helps, right?
Yeah.
To kind of
Yeah.
shake you out of it or ask the key question or force the reflection.
Yes, and what I also learned was when you look at coaching, for example, really finding someone that's an advocate for you.
Mhm.
So there's a big difference between like, oh, my boss is my mentor and my coach, who in my head always has a particular agenda, role, obligation that they can't always be completely like, oh yes, you really need to calm down.
Yes. It's super dynamic.
Exactly. But yeah, if you actually connect with someone, if you're I think so what's really interesting here, Mark, is when people hire coaches, a lot of times what they hire coaches for is productivity based things. So it's like, I need to learn how to do more. I
Mhm.
need to learn how to be better. I need to learn how to, like it's always this next level sort of thing. And I've just come to a place where it's like, okay, I don't know that everything is linear from that standpoint. I think depth matters a lot more where you are. The depth and the understanding matters a lot more than
Yeah.
just jumping to your next step. And
Yeah.
I think that's how I created this incredible, hey, it's go, 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 do, do, do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you say it's not always linear, there might be some diminishing returns to some of these traits or behaviors or activities where
Yeah.
is what you're saying, like, more,
Yeah.
more, more isn't going to lead always to better results.
That's right. That's right. I think the wisest people are very self-aware. And I know we talk a lot about emotional intelligence
Yeah.
and I am the living, breathing example of, the higher you get in the corporate world, the less emotional intelligence. I mean, that's like proven, right? That the
Yeah.
higher you get, the less emotional intelligence that those executives have. And when that's your frame of reference, with other emotionally not so intelligent people, you don't even have like a real live comparison. It's
Yeah.
skewed because we're all toxic. We're all doing kind of crazy things. So I think coaching does help because it really connects you to your personal goals and aspirations. And I think the job of the coach is to hold you accountable to meet those objectives.
Yeah. On that point about EQ, is your experience of the research showing that you lose EQ points as you rise, like being a little bit more disconnected, a little bit more above the fray, having fewer people maybe telling you the truth?
I think it's a combination of you lose it and you are rewarded for all the other components
Mhm.
up to that, right? So when you think about executives, most of the time people don't say, "Oh my gosh, what a really great guy," or "What a really great person," or "I really liked them." If you think about all of the high-powered executives in society, they're people that get things done, they grow businesses, and everybody knows
Yeah.
they'll leave people in the wake.
So so that sounds like a corporate selection bias of who's getting promoted.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
exactly it. Yes. Yep.
And, before he passed away, Jack Welch, I think, shared some interesting reflections, or it was an epiphany on his part, kind of back to the point of getting the right results and behaving the right way. He was teaching a business school, so everything's a two by two matrix. You think high and low and middle in those two dimensions. And he was really preaching this idea of like, yeah, sometimes you got to fire the people who are getting the right results the wrong way. And that kind of runs counter to what you heard about how he behaved and what he
Yeah.
rewarded as CEO, I guess. With We can't interview him about it now, but I'd be
Now,
curious to go and dig of like where that awareness
that
came
came
from.
from
Maybe it was reflection upon retirement. I don't know.
I think it's some of it's longevity, right? So if you actually stay in a role long enough and you have some wisdom, you just can't ignore the data points. So, for example, I've worked for organizations where at those high levels, there's just such crazy turnover.
Yeah.
And at some point, you have to look and acknowledge, like, hey, something's wrong here. We can't keep like you can't grow when the key leadership roles are constantly changing. And potentially, that's what he saw. What he saw was, well, I've been around the block long enough to see that this pattern not working. Definitely not working. You can't do it that way.
So Genevieve, I'd love to shift into talking more about the coaching and the work that you've been doing. And you talked about this process of continuing to heal. Does coaching others help you continue to heal in different areas?
I've learned to be a lot more authentic and transparent.
Yeah.
So, yes, I would say yes. I have learned to show up as I am and not overperform. Like that was part of what I learned how to do was
Mhm.
you got to always be perfect. You got to overperform. You got to show up and be something that you're not. And I've learned to
Yeah.
and I know why that happens. That happens because the environment isn't safe. You don't
Right.
perceive
Right.
the environment as being safe, so you make stuff up. And I've learned to create space for myself. And when you create space for yourself, you create space for other people around you. So, yes, it has helped me because I've had to create that safe space. And when I feel myself getting anxious, I now have a mechanism that I can use. It's like, okay, slow, you're at like a 10.
Yeah.
Let's get you back down to at least a 6, maybe a
Yeah.
4.
Instead of turning it up to 11.
Yes, yes. Or say, "Come on, everybody, let's all be intense together."
Yeah. You're triggering all kinds of kind of flashbacks to some previous workplace environments of mine of yeah, where the things we're doing aren't working, but you all need to try harder and care more and focus and intensity and just all these words being thrown around. And like the end, I'm an engineer. So I'm like, I need you to define intensity for me. Is it in appearance or is it staying longer hours? Is it think what
What does that look
I
like?
I struggled with that when it was sort of, just this hard charging and it was not hard charging and successful where, that was a struggle just to think through, it seems like you're all like doubling down on the things that aren't working, but sometimes
Correct.
people don't know what else to do. And again, maybe that comes back to the role of a coach.
Yeah, it's that people don't know what to do. I think it's also that high performing teams actually like, you can have a really high performing team that is quietly and slowly burning out, but it happens at such a secret, stealthy rate that you don't realize until it's way too late, and so you think everything's fine,
Mhm.
everybody's okay, and it's like, no, actually, it's not. People are quietly quitting, definitely,
Yeah.
and you need the best out of those people every
Right.
day.
Yeah. What you said a minute ago, it's really making me think that alignment between who you are and who you think you're expected to be
Mhm.
at a conversation. Again, you're really making me think back like almost 30 years now of like once I asked a leader that was a yelling, screaming type, why, I was on my way out the door already, almost for business school. So I felt safe. I didn't have a lot to fear, I guess I should say. Like I was a little afraid, but asking like, so why is that the way you're leading? And he didn't, I mean, he basically traced it all the way up to the company's board of directors of basically just saying, hey, the beatings slow downhill and, I got to pass along the beatings. But that was kind of what he was conditioned to do. But then, I ran into this person at a restaurant. I was out with friends. I'm like, oh, he was the last person I wanted to see. But it was eye opening because he was with family and people in like multiple generations. He was a grandfather. I'm like, people seem to love this guy.
Right, right.
I
Yeah.
that was like one of my first real eye openers about maybe a gap between who he was and the role he was playing at work. And I'm like, "No, I want to be me."
Yeah. Yeah. when I left the one of my roles, and prior to leaving, everyone that left talked about like, oh, how toxic it is to work there. It's so toxic to work there. And I kept thinking like, it's not toxic to work
I
here. You guys just don't know how to play in that sandbox, right?
Yeah.
So then when I left and had some eye-opening experiences and realizations about it, I had somebody tell me who worked there. She said, I don't judge anyone for how they behaved when they worked there. I don't think we saw who anybody really was.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I thought, how true is that? Because there was very little alignment between who people showed up as and who they really were.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it's easy to kind of scoff at the feedback or, yeah, turn it on them. I mean, 30 years ago, I don't think people used the word toxic in this way. We had toxic chemicals, but that was in
Yeah,
very literal sense
yeah,
of stuff you probably shouldn't have been breathing in. But there's that, more fashionable to talk about like, oh, they're so toxic or the workplace was so toxic. And yeah, I mean, it does have a lasting effect on you.
yeah. And
Sure.
sometimes it's true that like no workplace is perfect. And
Sure.
I think it does. I really do believe, Mark, that it starts from the top. And what I have found is that a lot of executives and a lot of founders really aggressive goals and they have great vision and that's what makes them who they are. But if you're going to leverage other human beings in the process of creating those goals, you have to pay an equal amount of attention. And I literally mean an equal amount of attention to the culture. And I don't mean like, oh, we taco trucks. We wrote
Yeah.
something on the wall. It's
Yeah.
like, no, really, like what's happening here that we can't hit our goals because we're churning people out so incredibly fast.
Yeah. Yeah. There I chuckle with you at the superficial things. I mean, I think when I was in business school and it was the dot-com boom and we went and visited companies in Silicon Valley, and like I think people were confusing culture with perks.
Yes.
Look how many perks we have.
Look
Like,
at us.
but that doesn't make it a great or meaningful place to work. But I'm curious how many, what you think of coaching entrepreneurs or founders where the conundrum is that that vision is appealing and attracting and it pulls people in, but maybe without the culture focus, it doesn't live up to what it could be. Maybe there's a lot of churn. I'm like, oh, those people leave. It's not hard to attract others because of the vision.
Yeah. I would love to spend an hour with any executive who really any founder executive who really has and I think there's lots of really great businesses out there, and I want to see them succeed. But I think the key is, hey, spend an hour with me and let me talk to you about nervous systems. Let me talk to you about the amygdala. Let me talk to you about fight or flight versus the
Mhm.
executive center. All by the way, all things that you don't want to spend time learning or paying attention
Yeah.
to, but are like the linchpin thing that could blow the top off of your organization. So
So how do you start that conversation? Like, what's the point that draws somebody in? We're like, oh, Genevieve, I don't have time for a science lesson.
no,
I need help.
I'll tell you what you don't say. And I've said this, I've had this said to me. I was like, what? You don't say you got to go slow to go fast. No executive wants to hear
Yeah.
that is definitely not on the list. But what is on the list is, hey, if we could be more effective as a team,
Mhm.
what if there are things that we don't know that are impacting our effectiveness? And if we just took some time to get clarity and alignment on these things and practice them, we would have significant success moving forward. Measurable
Mhm.
success moving forward. That to me is the conversation that you have to have.
So, does the phrase "go slow" trigger the reptile brain before they even hear the words go fast?
Exactly.
Stop listening, they start
No,
I
no, you break out in hives. You're like, when's my next appointment? I gotta go.
so you've gotta frame it in terms of what they do want or what seems more palatable,
Yeah.
at least dig into?
Well, what every executive wants definitely is to win and they want success.
Yeah,
The problem is they hire people who come in with new tactics, new strategies, and they very rarely think in terms of if we really want better performance, how do we create a space for better performance?
yeah,
Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about is better performance.
yeah,
And no, nobody wants to hear you. And what I talk about typically is like if we can take some time to set a foundation and have some language that we can refer to help you get more of what you want, would you be agreeable to starting there? And I've been in high stakes boardrooms and I've been part of the problem. So like I know, I can tell
mhm,
I get it. I know where you're coming from, but
yeah,
what I want to tell you is you'll actually make more progress if we can commit to a couple of things. And by
right,
the way, Mark, sometimes it's like, hey, it's not going to be you. You just need to agree to it. And we need to be able to hold you accountable for some of these things. But
mhm,
you're not going to be the person to spearhead this campaign here because the bridge has already been burned. And it's just not, I don't, like everybody has their gift, right?
yeah.
Sometimes it's not the CEO, but he has to understand it. It's not the founder, but they have to understand it.
So, say more about that. What I hear you saying, I'd love to hear an example or just more
Yeah.
about is some like paraphrase back what I think I'm hearing. Sometimes the person who broke the situation can't put it back together. So,
Yeah.
or they have to defer to someone else who can, or
Yeah.
I'm thinking in terms of, and this is overly simplistic, of like, breaking a physical object like a coffee mug.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So I think when you're at that high, you're at that level of the organization, there is still some part of you that has an identity that doesn't match being the nice guy. Like people, I think, misunderstand that. And it's kind of like, well, I have to look strong and I have to look like this and that. I'm like, yes, you all of those. I agree, all of that. But if you don't have an understanding of it, then in any boardroom, any feedback meeting, any email that you read where somebody you need to be able to recognize this was a fight or flight conversation
mhm,
and the feedback has to be adjusted accordingly. What I find is that people have these heated meetings
yeah,
and then they're like, well, we got to do this because look how mad they are. And it's like, okay, but like we keep getting bad advice from the mad people. We need to create
yeah.
some space where like you have to understand it because I want to be able to ask you, do you think that they responded from their executive center or do you think they responded from a nervous system sort of reaction, and then what should we do with that feedback?
And I imagine there are epiphanies where people are like, "Oh, that might not have been a great decision because everybody was a little too
A little too hot.
activated in the amygdala." And is it all does that activation always show itself as, like, visible anger and yelling?
No,
Probably more subtle ver no.
no. It's fight, flight, fear, or fawn, or freeze. So
Got it.
it's all of those things. And the thing that tricked me the most, Mark, was the fawning. It was like, oh, yes, excellent idea. Or we're going to implement this is fabulous. This is just what we needed. And then, like, nothing happens.
Yes.
Wait, but we all agreed. And it's like, yes, but they all agreed in like this kind of crazy mindset. And they're not gonna fight with you because you're
Yeah.
an executive, but you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna fawn, and then they're gonna go off and do their own thing.
Yeah. Or the freeze is when nobody's speaking up and the boss thinks that means agreement and alignment and, well, I
Correct.
disagreed. So
Correct.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And
different than everybody agreeing, being willing to move forward.
yes, and it's almost I would say most people don't have the luxury to go to fight. Most
Yeah.
I don't think most
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
have the luxury to go to fight.
Mhm.
So, like, from a coaching perspective, when you have a coach that's willing to sit down with you and go through your week and your day, you can start to identify patterns, and I think the way you bring those people along, Mark, is you show them over time, like, "Okay, what here let's break this down. What happened there? Great.
Yeah.
Okay, what do we okay, look, here it happened again. What okay." So you get them to you got it. They want to see a pattern before they fully buy in and start modeling the behavior is what
Mhm.
I meant by, like, "Hey, they can't always be the person who broke it, can't always be the person that fixed it."
Yeah.
They sometimes need more time.
Yeah. And I could see where somebody who's been successful and has a healthy ego doesn't think the fawning is fawning. No, yeah, I am brilliant. I do have great ideas. I've hired smart people who
Exactly.
think their way. What's the problem, Genevieve?
Validation is just all validation of my own brilliance. Yeah. And listen, every high profile, every high performing person has ego. Like
Mhm.
that's just part of what makes them high performing.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a balance there. But yes, if you're not aware that, like, was that really genuine? You know,
Yeah. So a good coach asks tough questions and yeah, you hope people respond and step up to the challenge. So I invite people check out Genevieve's website. There's links in the show notes. It's gscory.com. As we wrap up, Genevieve, I appreciate all of your reflections and your openness and authenticity today. I'm not fawning over you. I mean,
for no reason to. We're good.
it's sheer. But to kind of wrap up, if you kind of share how people find you as a coach, like what's kind of the ideal profile among entrepreneurs, corporate executives, who's the best fit for you?
Yeah. I think anyone who listened to this story and heard some component of, "Oh, oh,
Glimmer.
it felt a little like me," or that hit a little too close to home. Typically, what I find is those are highly successful people, high performing people that have gotten to a point where they feel some sense of exhaustion. Like they're not finished creating impact, they're exhausted.
Yeah.
Those are typically the folks that I can help the most, and I know because 'cause I've been there, and I wish somebody honestly and truly, Mark, I wish somebody had grabbed me a couple years ago and went like, "Hey, friend,
Okay.
I've seen your future. It's kinda ugly. Calm down. Like, let me help you. Let me help you show up as you really want to be."
Yeah. I'm glad you showed up that way here on the podcast. So again, I hope people come check out the website. Even if they're not in a position to jump into coaching, it looks like you've got a newsletter for women in particular, a lot of different resources and
A
information.
podcast? I have a podcast.
The podcast is called
Fix This, Grow Fast.
"Fix This, Grow Fast," not slow.
No, I know, because you know what? I gotta get people to listen, Mark, and
True.
my people wanna go
And they can listen at 1.5 speed if they want, right? Do more, listen to more. It's humor. Well, I hope people will check out your podcast as well. Genevieve, it's been a pleasure meeting you, and thank you for being here on My Favorite Mistake.
It's been a great conversation. Thanks for hosting me.
Thanks. Sure thing.